All right, so in this video, let's try to do some word count in Google Sheets. So first of all, let's start with a small and easy example, I guess, and then move on to larger data like this one. So I'm just gonna copy like this much. Let's actually go this far. That's good. And paste it over here. Let's start with counting the words in a single line. So if I wanted to know how many words there are here, we should get 4. Now the way we can get to it, we should be able to use split function. And split function should allow us to take this text and split it using some sort of separator, delimiter. So in this case, as a separator, I'm going to use this space. So quote space quote, that will be our separator. If I close parentheses and hit enter, see, I got all those 4 words separated in this different columns. So at this point, if I wanted to know how many this is, we should be able to use counta function. And counta function counts any cell that's not blank. So for example, if I select like this much, including these blanks, I close parentheses and hit enter. See, I still get 4 because these are blanks, they don't count, and these 4 would count as 4. So this way we should most likely get our total word count, assuming we don't have some weird cases. So an example of that, if you had something like this, like a comma after a space and a space again, something like that, then that comma would separate itself to a separate cell, and technically that would not be accurate. But for right now, I'm not going to worry about that. Let's just undo this. So if I took this and I drag the split formula down, you'll see that every column is going to get its own basically split using that space again, and we got what we got. And then let's just combine this formulas in a single formula. So instead of doing counta function separate from split, I can just go ahead and take the split function, put it inside of our counta function, and we should be able to see the number of words right in here. And if I drag this down, see, we get 1 word, 2 words, 4 words. And then if you sum all of these up, that should be total number of words for the whole column. This so far gives us the number of words for just this cell. Now let's just do one formula that will give us the total. So what I could do, I could just take this and convert this to an array calculation. So just to show you how that would work, if I take this counta out, so by default that would be this, but then I can just go ahead and do a range here from A to, in this case I'm doing all the way down, but you could also select up to a certain point. And right now if I had enter, that doesn't work, but if I go back and do array formula by adding array formula around this, you can do that using Control-Shift-Enter or Command-Shift-Enter. If I just hit enter now, see, it basically just drags this whole thing down. Then I get this value errors because, well, those are errors. Now, before I get to counting this, I want to see, does counta function count value errors too? I assume it does. So if I go here and do counta and select these errors, would it count them as a count? Yes, it does. So that means we need to get rid of those errors before we get to counting all of these words. So to get rid of those errors, I'm going to go back to this and put this split inside of if error function like this. Hit enter, and hopefully now those errors will disappear. Now let's just check to make sure now these are going to be considered blank. So I'm going to do counta and select these cells below. And we get a 0, which means at this point, what we should be able to do is simply just take this formula and add it inside of counta function like this. And as you can see, we got 74 words count total. So I'm going to cut that, put it in here. So that's, as you can see, the count of total words in that column. Now, just to verify that this works as it should, let's just go and add another word here. And as you can see, 75. So that should take care of the word count. Now let's take this to another level by, I'm going to delete that, by getting a unique list of words from this column and then trying to count how many times each word appeared in that column. So for example, if there's the word coffee in multiple places, we'd like to add and say we had 8 times or 10 times or whatever the word coffee repeating in this column. Like for example, we have the word love here. See, once, then there is another one here. We should count them. Now, first of all, now let's get back to that split function again and take this text and split it by a space. Now, if I drag that formula down, that should separate this and see we got love here. There is probably more. This one is loves, not love, but anyways. So if I keep scrolling down, the problem is going to be that, for example, like this love has this exclamation sign after that, and that would not match with this word that doesn't have that. So we probably want to get rid of those exclamation signs or any weird characters from this particular text before we get to counting words. And that would also include like this, see, question marks and things like that, or see expected, like in here, if we look, there is that expected and a comma. So we would like to get rid of those commas. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get back to this and delete this. And I'm gonna do some regular expression, and we should be able to do regex replace to basically take this original text and find some characters using regular expressions. So as a regular expression in quotes, I'm going to do 2 square brackets like this and provide the characters I need to replace in this brackets. If you want to learn more about this, I have 4 separate videos about regular expression functions. I explain a lot about this. It's pretty complicated, but for here, I'm just gonna go ahead and do exclamation sign, question mark, comma, and you would have to think what else is available here to remove, right? So I'll do a period probably in here too. And for now, I'll leave it at that. So I'm gonna replace all of that with a space like this. So quote space quote. Now, when I replace it with a space, let's just drag this down. Now, the reason I don't want to remove them is because if there is no space after the comma, then it's going to basically remove the comma, for example, and then I have expected and but as one word right next to each other. Again, assuming there was no space here. So to avoid that situation, I'm just adding that extra space. But with that extra space, now we have a problem that we need to get rid of those extra spaces. Like in here, see, we have a lot of spaces now happening because of the original that had a lot of stuff happening. So I'm going to just go back on top here and put this whole thing inside of a function trim. And trim will basically normalize all spaces in the middle of your text. So if you have multiple spaces in the middle, it would convert them to a single space. It would also remove all the spaces before and after the phrase. So by doing this, I just want to make sure I don't have those crazy extra spaces. You'll see how this now sits right next to each other because we just converted this to a single space. So now that we kind of normalized our text, now remember, depending on your text, you may need to replace more characters than what I just did in this example. So what I could do at this point, I can just take this and split it using the space. Again, that whole thing is going to go within that split function. So comma and a space as a split character. And if I hit enter and drag this down, all our words are basically spread across all of these different columns. So I want to just put them all in one single column so I can get a nice unique list from that column. And to do that, I'm going to take this whole thing and put it inside of function flatten, which should basically allow us to take all those multiple column values and put them inside of a single column. Now, because I have this as a simple formula that drags down, it doesn't allow me to do that. But if I look for this one, see, it just took that first one and converted to a single column like this. Now, I want to take this and convert it to, again, an array formula. So I'm going to just do this from A2 through A to get the whole column. And then I'm going to do that regular expression to basically search and replace those characters, then trim this, split this, and flatten this whole thing. Because this is going to be an array calculation, we want to make sure we do Control-Shift-Enter, Command-Shift-Enter to do array formula around this. And I'm going to hit Enter. And I got some reference error. Now let's click and see what it says. So what it says, the result was not automatically expanded. Please insert more rows. So basically, I got so many results from this that it doesn't let me go all the way down. So let's just, for now, instead of going from A2 through A, let's just do from A2 through A22 for right now. So I'm going to just hit Enter. And now, as you see, I got this thing in a single column. And I got this one that gives me these four. Now you'll see there's these extra spaces because it needs to kind of normalize the number of columns for all of them. So even though there's nothing happening after this, because there is another phrase that has more words, it has to basically pad those with this extra spaces. So this first phrase is this four. Then if I keep going down, we have the next phrase. See, it's going to keep going until here. So that's pretty much like this one. And then it's going to be this coffee taste all right, which will be, well, it's actually here without any spaces. Then after that, we have original use. So there we go. So basically, it's all these words in this column now with some extra spaces that we don't really care about. What I can do now, I can take this thing and put it inside of a function unique. And let's make sure we close that parenthesis here. Hit Enter. And that should give me a nice, clean, unique list from all of these words we have in this column A, including the space. Let's also sort these. So by sorting that space will go to the bottom. And generally, we'll just have a nice sorted list. So it's easier for us to eye and see what's going on. So I'm going to add sort function to this, hit Enter, and here we go. That's our list of words. So one thing you will notice here is that we have coffee, uppercase, and then we have coffee, lowercase in here. And then I assume we may find more cases like that. See, like this too. So it doesn't think that our uppercase and lowercase is the same word. So to take care of that, let's get back to this and convert all the text we have here to lowercase first. So I'm going to take that range and put it inside of a function lower, like this. Close parentheses, hit Enter, and now see we only get one coffee because we converted all to lowercase and we have just one occurrence. And that should happen with that other word as well. If we just scroll down, there it is. Good. So this gives us a nice unique list. So that's what I'm going to call this, unique list of words. And if you wanted to know how many unique words you have in this column, you could use that counter function to select all of these words. And there it is. So we have 60 unique words in this basically set of data. So now that we have this list of unique words, we want to calculate how many times each one of those words repeats. To make that happen, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually go back and copy this formula and paste it here on the side. And I'm going to replace that whole sort and unique thing I did. I'm going to delete those two functions and remove closing parentheses for those. And get back to this. This is where we used to be when we started with this. And then I did that unique and sort to get this nicer looking list. But what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to keep all the repetitions of my words, like this one, etc., in this long column. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a function query on this whole column we just did. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this data. I'm just going to make my life easier by selecting this whole column D, at least for now. And then I'm going to do comma. And then it's going to ask for the actual statement we're going to write here. So as a statement, since I'm going to be using an array for this, instead of using this as a column like this D, I'm going to convert it to an array so I can use array syntax. So I'm going to use this curly brackets around this. And then I'm going to go here and do my select statement. So I'm going to say select column 1, which is that column because we only have one column in this selected data. So I'm going to select column 1, and I'm going to also select the count of column 1. So we'll have those two things here. And then I'm going to take that and group by that column 1 as well. Now, if you want to learn more about this function, I have a playlist that's about like probably 13 or 14 videos. So it's not something I can explain in a couple of minutes. So if you want to learn more about how you use this function, you can watch all those videos for more information. But for this one, that's going to be my statement. I'm going to do just comma and then do number of rows that are headers 0. So I'm going to close parentheses and hit enter. What you should see is that I got this thing where I have each occurrence of those words and then how many times each one of those words repeat. So for example, the word and apparently appears twice in this column. And the word coffee appears 3 times. Now we can just go over it really quickly to see if that's accurate. Let's just check coffee, for example. See, we got 1 here, 2 here, 3. And that seems to be it. So there it is, 3. Excellent. So that gives us what we need. We also get this blank because one of the options in this column is blank. So for a blank, it doesn't actually count these blanks. So it just gives us 0 for those. But we don't really care about blanks anyway, so no need to count our blanks. Now, what I'm going to do inside of this function, instead of basically using this column D, I'm just going to go to this column D, grab this entire formula. I'm going to put that array function outside, even though it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to copy this, hit escape, go back to this function. And instead of using this brackets and D, I'm just going to basically paste that whole function as the data. And then I'm going to do that Command-Shift-Enter or Control-Shift-Enter to add array formula wrapper around this whole thing. So if I hit enter, that should still give me the same thing, but now I don't really need this column anymore. So I just have one formula that gives me all of this. Now, when you do something like this, you probably would want to have higher numbers to show up on top. So for example, if I have higher counts for certain words, I would like that to be sorted probably on top. So for that, I'll just go back to this and say order by count of column 1 descending. 4 times this word appears, then 3 times this, then 3 times this, and then so on. We got our word count for each one of those. And the last one we get here is the blank. So let's try to remove this blank out of here too. So I'm going to get back to this. And when I do this count, before group by, I'll just say where col1 is not null. So we don't want it to be blank. So if I hit enter, let's see if that's gone. Yep, see, blanks are now gone. We don't have to deal with them anymore. And we got our list of words with their basically counts. And then lastly, you may need to have like better names for each one of these columns on top of this and on top of this. So that basically just means I'm going to go back to now the formula bar and do the rest, because this formula is getting a little long and a little crazy. So I'll just go in here, and what I'll do after this order by, so we'll just do a label and we'll say column 1, and we'll label it in single quotations. We'll call it words. So there it is. See, we now put this words column name on top of this. And then here we can say, I guess count is fine, or you can change that too if you wanted to by basically going here, doing a comma, and then we'll say count of column 1, which should be that second column, should be named number of occurrences. Okay, let's just spell that right. So now we can take this logic and apply it to a larger set of data, like, for example, this one. See, we have all of these happening. So it's not too large, but it's about 569 rows. But now you want to think about if we split every one of these words, it's a lot of words. And then we have this other column that's even more, because each one of them is like a long format review like this. So we can use this on that as well. So I'll just take this same formula. It's not going to be that different, so I don't want to rewrite the whole thing. Copy this, hit escape, go back to the sheet 1. And then I'll go right next to this someplace. Paste that formula. We just need one equal sign. So if I want to do this with this D column, I'm going to say D2 colon D, however far you want this to go. Let's just try to go all the way down and see if this is going to handle it well. So apparently by doing this, I get value errors in between those, and it counts values as some of the options, which I probably don't want to have. So I'm just going to go back and do some if errors here. So before we flatten this, let's just do if error. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. That seems to be, see, it highlights the split function ending. So I'm going to do another parentheses right there, close, and we got a nice clean list by doing this. As you can see, a lot of words. But the most popular word in that column is apparently great. And 72 times it happened in that column D, and then we got this one, which happened 60 times. Now, you don't have to keep this on this worksheet. I can just take this, cut, Command X, and add another worksheet and paste it here. And that should give us a nice report. And then if I wanted that to also apply to this E column with all of this long format text, same thing is going to happen for that. So I'll just copy this formula, hit escape, and paste it in here. So far it's the same thing. And the only thing I have to change is just make sure I refer to this column E instead of this column D. So I'll just go back to this and open the formula and change this D to column E. This is going to take a while probably. Let's see. So it was able to process this, and it took a while. It was trying to add more rows, so basically it has enough space. But here we go. We got our results. So I ended up with about 5,500 or some words. So as you can see, there are these brackets in this data set too. So maybe you want to remove it, or maybe you want to keep it, or maybe see there's this parentheses like closing, or maybe it's parentheses opening. Maybe we want to remove those too so it doesn't mess with our data set, right? So I could just go back to this formula and see Google Sheets is lagging at this point because I got a lot of stuff going on at this point. So I'm going to just do parentheses opening closing as some of the characters that needs to be replaced. And I'm going to do these two, I guess, curly bracket parentheses. Let's hit enter and see what happens. It's going to recalculate. Well, let's just go take a look if it took care of those cases. Seems like it did. There are more things here. See, there's this semicolon, maybe something to take from this too. But you could take a lot of time to clean this up if you wanted to. But overall, we got our numbers. So some of these words are pretty much useless because they're very common words. But at some point, we're going to get some words that we possibly care about. And for example, for that word coffee in that whole column with a lot of reviews, we got 167 times that the word was mentioned in that column. Tea was mentioned 153 times. So basically that works. As you're doing this sort of stuff, you have to be conscious about that. If you have tons and tons of data, Google Sheets will probably not be the best way to approach this because this is going to get really, really slow. But I was able to deal with this data that has about 569 lines with this long format text, and it seems to be doing good enough job to get this done. And that should do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.